Chapter 1883. Dingfengbua. Fatty Su said to Zhang Yi, "I'm in a very wonderful state now. I feel—" He looked down at his palms and clenched his fingers twice, "that I have become one with this world of ice and snow." Zhang Yi smiled teasingly. "You're the slowest one among us. A sacrificial spirit is extremely precious. You have to make good use of it." As he spoke, he looked at Zhou Kur. "Look, even Kutter broke through 3 days earlier than you." Fatty Su lowered his head embarrassedly. But I also tried hard. I feel that I am very strong now. Brother, please believe me." Zhang Yi smiled faintly and did not take this matter to heart. Zhou Kur gathered her hair and smiled gently at Zhang Yi. "Although you said that this battle is only about honor, not life and death. But the help of people around you is also part of strength. Let me transform your body." Zhang Yi smiled and nodded. "Okay, come on." Fatty Su came over to flatter him. "Lauda, with your current strength, no one in the human world can beat you, right? You are too cautious." Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes and reminded him, "Don't underestimate anyone. The Knights of the Round Table can pass through the world of underground civilization with a team of more than a dozen people. No one can tell how strong they are. And remember, the world has changed. While you are getting stronger, others are not idle either. Li Changgong is an example. Never underestimate anyone. Otherwise, it will be fatal." Fatty Su scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "I know, Lauda." Zhou Kutter came behind Zhang Yi and stretched out her snow-white and soft hands. Her hands were so beautiful, white, tender and slender, as if they were carved by Michelangelo with a chisel, without any flaws. Perhaps the only thing that can be compared to her perfect hands is her feet. That was the benefit brought by her ability, making her as flawless as white jade. According to Yang Xia, this is an ability that will make all women in the world jealous. She placed her hands, which were as soft as mutton fat and warm jade, on Zhang Yi's temples. The bright white light gathered in her palms and then flowed into Zhang Yi's body like a trickle of water. At this time, Britannia's warships had already arrived off the coast of Tianhai City, less than 100 nautical miles away from Sogo Island. King Arthur sat cross-legged on the deck, with his ancestral luxurious knight's two-handed sword next to him. The rubies and sapphires inlaid on it would have been priceless treasures before the end of the world. He closed his eyes and breathed steadily. Behind him, some were standing or leaning on the railings. These were the members of the Knights of the Round Table who had come to watch the battle and provide protection. It was a gentleman's agreement that the fight between the two was only about honor, not life and death. But no one dares to guarantee the life of the most powerful alien in a country. At 9 o'clock in the morning, King Arthur slowly opened his eyes because he received a message from Zhang Yi. The battlefield will be within a radius of 100 miles, with Chongguang Island as the center. No advance arrangements are allowed, including traps, material preparations, etc. At 10 o'clock, I will enter the battlefield from the north and you from the south. The battle will continue until one side admits defeat. We will stop here and not hurt anyone." King Arthur raised his lips. "It sounds fair. I have no objection. I hope you can abide by these rules." Zhang Yi is a sniper, which is something many people tend to forget. He is very good at ultra-long-range sniping, so expanding the battlefield gives him room to display his abilities. So this rule was fair, and King Arthur naturally had no objection. The radius is 100 kilometers and the diameter is 200 kilometers. Zhang Yi will not have many opportunities to attack. This is the first time King Arthur fights Zhang Yi in his complete form, and he also wants to test how strong his sniping ability is. After the two made an agreement, Merlin said behind them, "We will guard the edge of the battlefield to prevent them from cheating. If you find that something is wrong, notify us immediately." The members of the Knights of the Round Table behind them all had proud expressions on their faces. Although they had only a dozen people, they could dominate the world. They are the only alien group in the entire world who have independently cleared an underground civilization copy. There are many strong people in the team. You know, The 6 people Zhang Yi met in the southwest region were ranked at the bottom among the 12. The most powerful aliens at that time followed King Arthur and Merlin to Atlantis for the first time. King Arthur smiled faintly. The news of the battle between us has been publicized through various channels. I believe Chaos will not do anything despicable. Merlin said with a smile. Oh, really? But I heard that his reputation has always been bad, and he often does despicable things. King Arthur shook his head and said frankly, in a battle of life and death, strategy is also part of strength, which is understandable. It's a battle of gentlemen, and I believe he won't use tricks. Merlin shrugged. That's best. Time passed minute by minute, and Zhang Yi also led his men to the periphery of the decisive battle area. They were on the Jin phone, and Lu Karen persuaded Zhang Yi to bring the city defense sniper with him. With the advantage of 200 kilometers away, if we use a city defense sniper, it will be enough to give the opponent a hard time. Zhang Yi smiled faintly and shook his head to reject the proposal. To be honest, I want to see how strong I am now. He clenched his fists, but a serious look flashed in his eyes. This battle was not a matter of life or death, so he had no burden. Since I have finally encountered such an opportunity, wouldn't it be a waste if I don't verify the improvement in my strength over this period of time? He also wanted to try and see to what extent he had reached after being baptized by the spiritual ocean of the Yihan tribe. Yang Xinshin said, "We will be here. Once we find that something is wrong, we will intervene in the battlefield immediately." Zhang Yi raised his right hand, made a skillful gesture, touched his eyebrows lightly with 2 fingers, and raised his hand towards them. This is telling them to just rest assured. Both sides checked their watches and immediately entered the battlefield when the time came. Zhang Yi raised his hand. There was a black bracelet on his right hand. Countless black vines extended from it as if it had life, then twisted and entangled, and finally turned into a huge black sniper rifle in Zhang Yi's hand. In fact, I don't need a city defense sniper now. I can also snipe 200 kilometers away. Zhang Yi does not need to aim. The prediction ability of time second hand has reached 4 seconds. He knew where King Arthur would appear in 4 seconds. This huge sniper rifle is called a gun, but after Lu Karen's modification, its performance and strength are comparable to that of a super cannon. With the blessing of supernatural powers, its range and power are extremely amazing. With one shot, Zhang Yi could easily destroy an aircraft carrier. Zhang Yi had already loaded the nuclear bomb and raised his gun to point it forward. After King Arthur entered the battlefield, he rushed forward like a storm. His figure was like a swimming dragon, moving forward irregularly, causing huge waves on the surface of the sea. Avoiding sniper attacks in this way is indeed a good way, but it's a pity that Zhang Yi didn't aim at all. He was locking onto King Arthur's future. Zhang Yi pulled the trigger hard, and the Xunlian sniper rifle made a deafening roar. A black beam of light pierced through the space above the ocean, carrying the nuclear bombs straight into the distance. The attack came quickly, from 200 kilometers away, and King Arthur caught its trajectory in an instant. He dodged nimbly in midair. However, just as he dodged, the bullet, which was still dozens of meters away from him, exploded with a loud bang. The power of the nuclear bomb spread, the sea water boiled instantly, and the waves surged into the sky. The force was so strong that King Arthur retreated very far away. His movement was suddenly stopped, and his body stopped in midair. Zhang Yi had already replaced the second bullet and continued to aim. What a terrifyingly powerful sniper. This kind of power is not an ordinary bullet, it's a missile. A nuclear bomb? How terrifying. King Arthur curled the corners of his mouth, but immediately continued to fly towards Zhang Yi in an arc path. Immediately afterwards, the second bullet came head-on. King Arthur was already prepared. He held the sword in one hand without unsheathing it. He caught the bullet accurately like playing golf, and then shot it hard into the distance. Boom! The sea in the distance was boiling again. Feeling King Arthur approaching, Zhang Yi was not in a hurry at all. He opened the door to the dimension and was ready to distance himself at any time. Then continue shooting. When King Arthur tried to deflect the third bullet, he felt a little bit of difficulty. Because the closer the distance, the shorter the reaction time. At this time, he had arrived at Sogo Island, which meant that the distance between the two was only 100 nautical miles. With the fourth bullet, King Arthur finally began to draw his sword. Sword of the King. I come, I see, I conquer. The sword symbolizing the kingly way was pulled out from the scabbard, and with a slash of the sword, the sharp sword light chopped down, directly splitting the bullet in half from the middle. Jang Yi was not in a hurry at all and continued shooting silently. He had not expected to take down King Arthur directly by taking advantage of distance. Consume, and then wait for the opportunity. When the seventh bullet was fired, the distance between the two was even closer, only 10 nautical miles. This distance seemed very close to the two of them. Jang Yi calmly loaded the bullets, then raised the gun and pulled the trigger. Bang! The deafening sound of gunfire echoed above the sea. The bishop-level sniper, combined with the top-level sniper rifle, the sound alone was enough to make one's heart tremble with fear. King Arthur had already adapted to the power of bullets, so he no longer had any concerns at this time. Facing the black light, he raised his hand and slashed with his sword. The black light was split in half. But at the same time, from the side of his body, another black light filled with destructive power shot towards his temple. King Arthur showed a look of surprise on his face. He remembered that he had clearly cut the bullet into 2 halves. Destined reincarnation. A very clever technique, using the dimension gate to redirect the bullet when it is flying in midair. This move is one of Jang Yi's sniper-killing moves, although it sounds simple and unpretentious. But if you don't know how to use it in advance, you'll be surprised the first time you see it. I don't know how many powerful opponents were killed by bullets that could turn corners due to negligence. At the critical moment, King Arthur raised the scabbard in his left hand and blocked it to his side. A transparent barrier appeared outside him. Whoever wears the scabbard of King's Word will not shed blood, for not only the sword is his weapon, but the scabbard as well. Bang! The black beam of light hit the barrier hard, and the black particles that rushed out splashed everywhere like sparks, but ultimately failed to break through this line of defense. Oh, interesting. Although King Arthur was not killed directly, at least some of his background was discovered. The scabbard is a means of defense, I have got it. It's time to replace the bullets with shield-breaking spears. Jang Yi said lightly, while changing the bullets with great skill. King Arthur is only 5 kilometers away from Jang Yi. This distance is enough for his sword to kill Jang Yi. That's enough. I can't let you chase me and shoot at me all the time, right? King Arthur smiled. He raised the sword in his hand and slashed at Jang Yi. Simple and unpretentious, the sword edge burst out with dazzling light, like a night cloud rising into the sky, piercing through the space. Excalibur. The scabbard represents defending the territory, and the sword represents conquering everything. Around Jang Yi, dimensional gates rapidly expanded. Everything in the universe. The sword slashed on the dimensional gate and quickly disappeared without a trace. At this moment, King Arthur took out a green conch horn from his waist. He put the horn to his lips and blew it hard. Beep. The sound of the horn came melodiously, and ripples began to vibrate in all directions along the space. As the sound waves spread, the originally undulating sea surface became as smooth as a crumpled piece of white paper that was suddenly ironed flat with an iron, without a single ripple. Jang Yi also realized that his dimensional gate began to shake under this strange fluctuation. Then, they quickly dissipated like layers of bubbles surrounding Jang Yi. Jang Yi's greatest reliance, his spatial ability, the dimension gate, was directly removed by King Arthur. The sea under my feet also became like a mirror, smooth and transparent, like a blue mirror. The scene was so beautiful that it seemed like a dream. Only then did Jang Yi realize what had happened. He felt the space around him in astonishment. After the dimensional gate was destroyed, he could not summon it again in a short time. Now he felt like a naked baby, exposed to the enemy. King Arthur held the conch horn in his hand, and the two men looked at each other from a distance, with the sea surface like a mirror beneath them. He smiled and raised the conch horn in his hand. I took this thing from a fisherman in Atlantis. It can make the sea calm and also limit the fluctuations in any space. I've made all the preparations to deal with you. What do you think, Chaos? Are you going to admit defeat now? Both parties who were watching the battle through special equipment in the distance also saw this scene clearly. Merlin narrowed his eyes. Fortunately, I have fought with Chaos, so I am very clear about his abilities. Otherwise, he rubbed his neck, I really can't deal with that kind of perverted defense. Lancelot held the sword in his arms and said with a sneer, the alien with time and space attributes has now been completely deprived of his space attributes. Do we need to continue this battle? The alien masters will fight with one move. The more powerful the alien is, the more important it is that they cannot be careless. Any simple oversight could lead to defeat in a duel. What's more, now, Zhang Yi's ability has been completely restrained. On Zhang Yi's team, Fatty Sue's face turned pale. Oh my god, is it? How can he have such a perverted thing? This is simply cheating. Yang Xinxin said lightly. No, it is a strategy to make targeted actions in advance based on the known intelligence. Could it be that my brother lost? Impossible. Liu Karen clenched his fists, finding it difficult to accept the facts before him. Uncle Yu frowned, but looking at Zhang Yi's expression, he doesn't look like he will lose. Hearing this, Liu Karen and others looked at Zhang Yi's expression in the video. Although I was a little shocked at first, I soon calmed down. Of course. There was no expression on Yang Xinxin's face because she had enough confidence in Zhang Yi. They don't understand what happened to their brother at all. Only she knew. After being baptized by 14.8 billion pieces of Yihan clan's spiritual essence, what changes have taken place in them? The shock on Zhang Yi's face lasted only for a moment, and he was amazed at the power of this special prop. You are worthy of being King Arthur. You are really capable. This is what makes it interesting. You didn't let me down. Zhang Yi said to King Arthur. King Arthur noticed something strange, because Zhang Yi was too calm. He was so calm that he didn't seem like a mutant whose abilities had been cracked. You. Zhang Yi raised the magic weapon in his hand. In just a moment, the divine refining also underwent extremely strange changes. With the Green Knight boss as its main body and being constantly transformed according to his special supernatural properties, this weapon possesses immense potential. And there is one more thing that many people overlook. There were 3.5 people who had received the baptism of 14.8 billion spiritual essences. The remaining half is the divine refining. A black light rose from Shun Lian's body. After a moment, Zhang Yi and Shun Lian both underwent terrible changes. The divine refining transformed into a huge black sword that was more than 2 meters long, with a wide blade and a bloody groove on the blade. Almost integrated with it was the pitch-black armor on Zhang Yi. It is so dark that even light is not reflected, so it looks as dark as a black hole. The joints between the various sections are sharp and angular, and the helmet on the head has become similar to the helmet of the Mad Dog Knight. Seeing Zhang Yi's current state, everyone was shocked and widened their eyes, unable to believe what they saw. Because Zhang Yi's appearance at this moment was almost identical to the 10 demons of the mechanical civilization. Especially King Arthur, who had entered the world after the Light Gate, had an extremely familiar feeling in his mind when he saw Zhang Yi's appearance and the black sword in his hand. For some reason, in his mind, the image of Zhang Yi and the king of mechanical civilization, the six-winged King Ichigo, gradually merged into one. His feeling was not wrong. This new set of armor was created by directly modifying the mechanical parts of Ichigo. As for the new divine sword in Zhang Yi's hand, it was also a fusion of Ichigo's Sword of King. This set of armor is not at the same level as the previous Qianlong armor, because armor is equivalent to a brand new operating system, which is embedded with the weapon system of mechanical civilization. What is the concept? Separate Zhang Yi and let the intelligence system control the armor alone to fight. It is comparable to a bishop-level alien. King Arthur looked at Zhang Yi in astonishment. Could it be that you have cracked the technology of the 10 demons? They also obtained the remains of the demons, but have not discovered much so far. And Zhang Yi has already applied it to his battle armor. Zhang Yi raised the pitch-black sword in his hand and pointed it at King Arthur. How about trying my new equipment? He pulled his right hand back, gathering strength like drawing a bow. The powerful force of the void, or it could be said that it was the antimatter energy drawn from the mirror image of the world, condensed on his blade like a tide. From a long distance, Zhang Yi slashed down fiercely with his sword. The sky and the ocean were like two smooth mirrors, and between them was an extremely silent space. This knife was like splashing ink, cutting the world in half. The surging energy suddenly split the world in the form of a blade. King Arthur came to his senses and quickly raised the scabbard in his hand. The scabbard of the king's sword is not stained with blood, and it is an invisible barrier blocking King Arthur. Boom! The black blade light rolled over and hit the invisible barrier. Its power was so strong that it forced King Arthur to retreat backwards in midair. King Arthur frowned, and suddenly he took the initiative to fall towards the sea below. Do you want to dive into the sea, or... King Arthur landed on the sea, his feet on the sea surface, but he did not fall into the sea. The conch horn can suppress the fluctuations in space and make the sea surface as calm as a well. This is because it has formed an inherent barrier in this area. The sea water is as solid as the ground. He was a knight, fighting in the air, and his swordsmanship could not be best utilized. King Arthur looked up at the sky, his eyes full of fighting spirit. He was extremely excited at this moment because this guy Zhang Yi, after being deprived of his spatial ability, actually chose to duel with him with a sword like a knight. Zhang Yi raised the corners of his mouth. As you wish. His fighting style should also change. Zhang Yi swooped down with the huge divine magic sword in his hand and chopped it down fiercely. Seeing this scene, Uncle Yu showed a worried look. Close combat has always been Zhang Yi's weakness. Isn't it dangerous to do this? Zhou Kutter smiled and closed her eyes when she heard this. She said lightly, Uncle Yu, what you said is already in the past tense. This chapter ends here. We'll come with a new tomorrow. Please subscribe if not already. Love you all.